Bonsai Association Belgium. I'd like to welcome you to the second day of demonstrations by Mr. Shinji Suzuki and his son, Mr. Hiroaki Suzuki. And just like yesterday, they will be assisted by their trainees. We have Mr. Zimmer from Germany. From the Isle of Belgium.
2日目、今日もよろしくお願いします。昨日が4時間という時間いただいたのに2時間で仕上がってしまったので、今日はゆっくりやりました。
Welcome to the second day of the demonstrations. He's very grateful that you've come. We did as was mentioned, the work was completed in 2 hours yesterday. It was supposed to be 4. And so they're going to try and work as slowly as possible today. If you have any questions at any point, please do ask, and then we can diverge from the talk and such like.
ゆっくりやるというのは冗談なんですけど、私たちプロですので、ポイントはちゃんと押さえて、プロはきれいに早くというのが一番見せ場なので、そこは曲げずに頑張って。すぐやっちゃいます。
So he was joking a little bit about doing it slowly. The point is that they are professionals, and one of the kind of the key ideas behind for Mr. Suzuki being a professional is to work very quickly, to work very efficiently, and not to take any shortcuts. So although they do finish quickly, it's not that they are sort of taking shortcuts or not doing the proper work. They are putting their utmost into it.
今日やらせていただくのは左が心拍ですね。大変古い木ですので、中にこう枯れた素晴らしい部分があったり曲がありますので、まず枝抜きをしてそこを引き出しています。
So one of the trees that we have here to demonstrate on is this juniper, the shinpaku, which is a very old tree, and as you can see, we have some very interesting deadwood features and a lot of branches on there. So the work will begin by removing some branches to show off some of the inner character.
中心になってやるのがマニュエル君といってもう長年修行したスペシャリストですので、彼中心に一緒にやりながら進めます。
And so Manuel is going to be in charge of doing the donkey work on this tree. So Mr. Suzuki will be making, and has already made, most of the big decisions. And Manuel will be doing the donkey work of having to wire everything. But he has studied under Mr. Suzuki for a great number of years and is more than capable of starting this tree by himself.
そういう厳しいってのは変ですけど、しっかり信用したので、本当にこの心拍に求める厳しさを彼に表現してもらおうと思います。
And so what he's going to ask Manuel to do is to remember that severity of those early years and the severity of the winters of Nagano, and to bring that character out from this tree.
こちらが米栂なんですけど、これは長野の岡谷っていう長野県の中心に湖がありまして、そこですごい大変なコレクターが、60年ぐらい愛してた木ですね。
So this is a Japanese hemlock, tsuga, and this was owned by a very famous collector who lived in Nagano Prefecture, the same area as Mr. Suzuki. There's a lake right in the middle of the prefecture, and he had a big collection there. He was very famous for a number of years, and he held this tree for he had it for 60 years. He had it in his collection for 60 years.
私20代からちょっとお世話になりまして、その小口さんっていう有名なコレクターなんですけど、 その会長がなんで盆栽始めたかというと、すごく体が弱かったんですって。それでお医者さんに何年も生きられないよって言われて、盆栽始めたら90まで生きられたんですよね。
So Mr. Suzuki, obviously coming from the same area, he had a relationship with the collector, Mr. Oguchi, from his 20s. So from a young age, Mr. Suzuki knew this man. And he asked him why, Mr. Oguchi, the collector, why did you start to do bonsai? And when Mr. Oguchi was a young man, he said that he was very weak. He had lots of health issues. He went to a doctor, and the doctor said, you don't have very long to live. And then Mr. Oguchi started to do bonsai, and from that he gained the kind of the power and the life force to continue on to the ripe old age of 90.
それで、最後の本当に亡くなるちょっと前に病院でもう家族も呼んでくださいって言われた時に、もうみんなこう集まった時に大口さんがクッと起き上がっていまだにその盆栽を手に入れてないって言って、それを持ってきなさいって言われて病室に持ってったんです。それから息を吹き返してまた何年か生きられた、盆栽によって生かされたような人生の方です。本当に盆栽大好きで。
And so there was an incident when he had some health issues and he was in a hospital, and the family were called for the. They said, you know, he's going to die soon. He was like almost in a coma, and so all the family came and they were all gathered in the room. And Mr. Oguchi suddenly woke up and he said, "Where's my trees? I want you to bring the tree I was working on before I fell ill." And so they did. They brought this tree into the hospital, and he kind of regained some strength and vigor and got back, and he lived on for another good few years after that. And so he was really kind of held together, and he got his strength through bonsai.
それだけこう盆栽を愛した方がお持ちだったわけですので、本当に心を込めていい姿に仕上げたいと思いますので、ご期待してください。
So this is a tree that was once loved by somebody who had such a deep passion and attachment to bonsai and to this tree. So he's going to do his hardest to make this tree to the best that it possibly could do in Mr. Oguchi's memory. And he hopes you enjoy watching this happen.
ではこちらが枯れてて、枯れるってことはこちらから強い刺激があったっていうことですので、それを一層引き出すためにちょっと角度を変えてみますね。
And so this tree's main sort of character feature is the deadwood, particularly on the trunk, and that is sort of indicative of very severe kind of climatic conditions, environment, particularly coming from this side. And so in order to kind of highlight that, to accentuate that, we're going to look at a change of angle, both towards the front a little and up on this side.
こうすることによってこの枯れた陣が引き立ちますので、立ててからあとはこれだけ厳しく生き抜いた木だから枝が多すぎますので、枝抜きという作業をします。ちょっとマニュアル固定してから。
And so by changing the angle, we see the line of this deadwood a lot more. Also, it's going to create a little bit of space underneath there, and really brings this to the foreground. And in terms of the sort of the balance between the living section of the tree and this deadwood, which we are looking to highlight, there's far too many branches. And so we're going to, once we've fixed it, we're going to look at removing some of those branches. So exactly. なぜこの葉っぱが
そうですね。これだけ古い木なのになぜこんなに枝があるかって言いますと、もともとはちょっと葉性の粗い木がだったんですね。それで将来良くなるために枝継ぎという技術でこの葉を継いだんで全体がちょっと若く感じますから、枝抜きによって古さを出します。
And so the reason why we have such youthful and vigorous foliage compared to the aged and half-dead trunk is that the tree originally had a different type of foliage, and it has been grafted using various different techniques with a better type of foliage. This is an Itoigawa foliage. Okay, and so very young shoots are grafted into the branches, and in order to get them to develop, then they must be sort of grown out. And so all of these branches are very young.
毎何年前におしらしたんですか？
おそらく継いで枝を衣替えしてから8年とか10年は経ってると思います。
And so usually this process takes about sort of 10 years, between 5 to 10 years from that initial grafting to being like the first sort of styling. So Mr. Suzuki reckons it's probably about 8 to 10 years since it was grafted. So the branches themselves are very young, the trunk is very old, and so part of the job today is going to be looking at trying to balance those two out.
枝継ぎ、この糸魚川の枝についてなんですけど、これもいろんな種類があって、吹き込みやすいのと吹き込んでからポツポツ枯れちゃう章があるんですよ。だからこの章に行き着くために何種類ものコース刺してみて、これがいいということになりました。
So the term Itoigawa it doesn't refer specifically to one foliage type. Okay, so the term Itoigawa refers to a region of Japan. Up near Niigata, it's a river, and there's a valley there, and a lot of trees were collected there in the past. They found a very specific sort of area where all of the trees there had a much more sort of compact growth habit, and the term refers to any of those types of varieties. Within the Itoigawa range, there are a number of different types. There are some which grow out very rapidly. There are some which form a bit more of a clump, and when you prune them back, they don't really extend out too much. And then there are some that, over a number of years in bonsai cultivation, what you find is one or two branches here and there begin to just die off. And so over the course of, say, 20, 30 years, each sort of bonsai specialist, people who specialise in grafting or growing junipers in this way, have kind of settled on their favourite varieties. And this is the one that Mr. Suzuki prefers.
今は発祥のことをお話ししましたけど、継ぎ方にもいろいろございまして、こういう先だけを取って枝に継ぐ方法と、それだとうんと時間がかかりますので、今うちでやってるのはこういう太いのを刺し目して、ある程度だったらもう枝の針金を曲をつけちゃって、それをいいところにこう移植するような、少しでも早くきれいにというのをやっております。
And so there's various different techniques for grafting into junipers, and each have their plus and minus points. One of the techniques is to take the end of a shoot and to graft that into a branch. And so you're grafting in a very small shoot, you graft it either into the trunk or into the base of a branch, and then grow that out. And that's the one that sort of takes quite a long time. As we said earlier, this tree has probably been in development for at least sort of 8 to 10 years since it's been grafted. What Mr. Suzuki is doing at his nursery is taking young sort of seedlings or saplings of junipers, so making cuttings, growing them on a little bit, actually kind of applying wire to the branches and giving them a little bit of shape, sort of compacting them, putting some movement within them. Okay, and then taking those young trees with the roots still connected and approach grafting directly onto the branches. Okay, and then over the course of a year, maybe 2 years, the approach grafted branch fuses with the main tree. They can separate the roots off of the young seedling, and the branch is now part of the main tree. And so you have this branch already on the tree with some movement in it. Saves a lot of time.
枝を継ぐ目的は本来は自然のままのがいいんですけど、長年やっても きれいにならない破傷があるので、そのために継ぐということですから。じゃあこれで枝抜きに入ります。
So there's a number of different reasons for grafting junipers. Obviously, it's always desirable to try and keep the trees in their natural state, but there are certain varieties of junipers that no matter how much you work on them, how long you keep them, the foliage won't kind of form attractive pads, or it has long-term difficulties, and so that's why they tend to graft with the foliage. So we're going to start with some branch removal now.
では枝抜きに入るんですけど、これだけ古いシャリがついてますので、こっちにも古いところがあるから、それを見せるためにこういう枝を抜きます。
And so we have this old section of the deadwood here, and hidden within here is another character point, another character feature which shows some great age. And so we're going to start off by removing some of the branches which are hiding that area. If anybody has any questions at any point, please do ask them.
こっちに古いのがあったので、こちらにもこういう古いのがありましたので、見えてきますので、それで今度はこれに合わせて枝分けをしていきます。
And so here we have the age character features here, and you can see in there's another section of deadwood and character. Okay, there's the live vein of this branch which comes down here. This is the point at which it was grafted. We can tell that. You might be able to see afterwards by the difference in the bark quality, the bark characteristics. Okay, so this is where it was grafted, and that from there on is the youthful new branch. And so they have exposed that section, and they're going to be looking to incorporate that as part of the design. Clearly they didn't remove enough branches.
前にちょっと荒掛けを、荒掛けって言って太い針金でちょっと枝を振ります。
And so he's just telling Manuel now to start the initial.
次はこちらの米砂なんですけど。
Just going to start the initial styling, so to use the sort of heavier gauges of wire just to place the skeleton structure of the main branches. And once that's been done and placed, Mr. Suzuki has checked it, then he can go on and do the fine detail work. Thanks.
ではこちらの米砂なんですけど、この木の特徴はこれだけの板間、曲がりのすごいのがありますので、ただそれが魅力ですけど、こうちょっとワンパターンになってて、これだけ曲がったっていうことはすごい厳しさを表現したいので、角度をうんと変えたいと思います。どうに変えるかといったら、こっちから立ち上がってますから、もっとこう県外にしようと思います。ちょっと起こしてください。
This tree's main sort of character feature is clearly the kind of the age and the character and the movement of the trunk. Okay, we have incredible character here, but at the current position, it feels quite monotonous, quite boring. It's just like one pattern he describes it as. This kind of it goes one way and then basically sort of comes back on itself in a similar sort of fashion. And so what they want to do in order to accentuate that, to change that, to take away some of that kind of similarity is to change the angle quite dramatically, and they're going to do that by a cascading sort of feel to it. So, お願いします。
米砂の特徴なんですけど、私弟子の頃にうちの師匠がこれを畑で作ってたのがあったんですよ。それで行ったらこんなのがいっぱい入ってたんですけど、この太さになるのに畑で10年かかったんですね。ですからこれが山でこの肌でなるまでには何百年って経ってますので、意外に太らずなかなかこんだけになる木は少ないですね。
So one of the kind of characteristics of hemlock as a species is they don't thicken very quickly. when he was an apprentice, his master had a number of sort of seedling type trees that were very young, only this sort of pencil sort of thickness. And after 10 years, they'd barely thickened at all. And so, for a tree to have gained, that sort of thickness of trunk, it must be several hundred years old.
これはおそらく長野県で、諏訪の上の方にある西岳という山から取られたものなんですけど、昔心拍の曲の魅力に惹かれて行ったら西岳っていうところに米栂があって、すごいシャリがついたのがいっぱいあったんです。それで昔の人がこれは素晴らしいと思って取ってきたんだけど、ほとんど枯れてしまったというのが現実ですね。
There was a time in Japan when bonsai was really starting to sort of boom, sort of 100, 150 years ago, and people were going up and collecting trees from the mountains, particularly junipers, and there was a lot of interest in the incredible movement of the trunks of the natural junipers and the deadwood. And people went up into the mountains near Nagano, again, which is where Mr. Suzuki is from, and where the kometsuga, the hemlock, grow naturally. And they found the areas where these trees had similar sort of types of movement. They were growing in very harsh environments. They had lots of deadwood features on them, half-dead trunks, and such like. And a lot of them were collected at the time, but not very many survived.
似た樹種でエゾマツがあるんですけど、日本では常盤木、絶えず緑なんですけど、そこで春芽出しがすごく綺麗なんで、その芽出しのことを常盤木の花ですから、この芽出しは本当に素敵です。
So there's lots of similarities with the Ezo spruce in terms of their kind of environment and growth habits and some of the characteristics that they share. They're both very sort of fine-needled conifers, and they are particularly prized, kind of like in Japan, for their spring as the buds open out and start to grow. So if you've ever seen the spruce grow, the new shoots, the beautiful green new shoots that are coming out, they look like flowers. And the hemlock is very similar. There's a real beauty in the spring of the extending new growth.
こちらの米栂の中心にあるのがテオ君といってドイツから来てるので、あんまり本人の前で褒めたくない結構才能のある子です。
So he's going to entrust some of the donkey work to Theo, his German apprentice, and he doesn't wish to compliment him too much in front of him and in front of everybody, but he says that he has a very good future. He has a great eye and superb talent, and he thinks he will do very well in the future, or hopes.
ちなみに年は23歳です。
He's only 23.
Thank you for coming.
ちょっと手をちょっと回せる。こうに起こすことによってこういう曲の激しさだとかいろんなのが見えてきますので、もっと見やすくするためにこの枝抜きでこれをもっと引き出します。
And so through changing the planting angle, what's happened is we've brought all of this movement in the trunk, which was previously hidden, was laid down flat. This has been brought up and has added another layer, very interesting movement within the trunk. And now, in order to really highlight that even further, Mr. Suzuki is going to go in and remove some branches that are hiding it.
本当に岩肌で落石だとかいろんなので生き抜いてこうやってなって、それでもこう生き上がって、それでまた潰されてっていうその厳しい表現を します。
And so what he's thinking about, what he's trying to imagine, and what he's going to try and represent is this idea that this tree had been growing from a crevice inside a rock. Started to grow out and then weighted down by the weight of snow, grows back up, gets smashed down again, grows back up, has more snow, that sort of repetition of that sort of harsh environment. He's looking to try and represent that within this tree.
枝抜きなんですけど、いいところを引き出すために抜くのと、ちゃんと残した枝に日が当たるようにこう広げてあげる目的でいらないのを切ったりします。
So the branches that he's looking at removing is from both an aesthetic perspective as well as a kind of a health perspective for the tree. And so when it's just allowed to grow out, and branches develop in lots of different places and they sort of all grow in amongst each other. And so his primary consideration is to remove the branches that are hiding the good places. Okay, and then once that has been achieved, then it starts to look at the finer, more sort of secondary branching structure. And what he's looking at doing is seeing those branches which are kind of growing in similar positions and kind of competing against each other. And if all those branches are kept, they're going to end up trying to fill the same space, shade each other out. And so he's looking at removing the branches which are going to be sort of competing, exposing the structure that he's wanting. They're looking at spreading it out so that every single branch, every foliage pad is exposed to the sun. And then when it is exposed to the sun, they obviously will grow, adventitious buds will start to come through, and the foliage pads will be created. Come on.
ここを見せるためにここにあった枝なんかこれをみんな取り出した。
So he cut it off a bit too quickly. He was going to try and explain what was happening. And so the branches that were removed, these sort of branches were growing out towards the front, the ones that now Mr. Hiroaki is turning into jin. And so they were all sort of growing out and covering the interesting areas, and so that's why they were removed.
ここもかぶってるように見えますけど、これはワイヤーでこの中に入れ込んで、ここを引き出して、ここを引き出してっていう感じで仕上げる。
So this branch that's kind of coming here, this is going to be wired and positioned sort of in between these two areas. So they're going to look at highlighting this area with a foliage block in between.
切った枝のこう生きた部分を陣にすることなんですけど、例えばこういうのがありましたら、
So the branches that have been cut off, turning them into jin.
こうなりますよね。
So
皮を剥くのに一旦これをこう潰すんですね。
and so it's very easy to remove the bark and the living tissues from the branch after it's been cut. just by kind of gently squashing with a pair of pliers.
そうすると、中の水水が剥がれますので、簡単にこう剥けるようになります。
And so by compressing the living tissues, it kind of separates from the main woody core, and it's very easy to take off.
なんか質問ありますか？
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any dangers like with creating jins, or is that like equivalent to cutting off a branch?
So the question was, is there any danger to creating jins, or is it just like cutting off a branch?
はい。そうですね。例えば生きたところを陣にしますので、ちゃんとこう、そうですね。つなぎ目のところを一旦これ以上皮がむけないように一旦ちゃんとこう切っておかないと全部ペロペロっとむけちゃいますので、そういうことを気をつけます。
So the only real sort of danger with creating jins is to consider how the live vein, so the living tissue, will be taken off. So particularly at the base of the branch, where it kind of joins in the trunk. If you do not wish for that live vein to be removed down the trunk, then it is a good idea to use a pair of scissors or something to sort of cut through to create a stop point for when you're pulling the fibres back. Otherwise, if you brush off all the live vein and peel it back, it'll keep going down and down and down and down and down to the roots if you try hard enough. Okay, so you've got to be careful about how you pull it off.
残す陣の長さなんですけど、やっぱり芸術だから同じところが切られますので、芯に残りやすいのをこう決めたら長さもちゃんとその風に感じるように詰めてあげます。
The most important thing to think about when creating jins, though, is the more kind of the aesthetic idea. To think about the length of the jin and where it is, and so to really kind of to cut it off at a certain length in order to sort of peel it back and to create the impression that you're looking for. So as you can see here, we're not on Mr. Suzuki Jr. Hiroaki is sculpting and carving the jins by hand in order to try and achieve the effect that they're looking for. Part of the consideration for the length would be the qualities of the wood that you would find in nature. And so, for example, junipers, the hardness of the wood means that the dead wood will last for a very long time. They don't rot away. Whereas with other species such as taxus, hemlock, and at the furthest end of the spectrum of the pine tree, the dead wood will tend to sort of snap off or rot quite easily, and so you often find hollow features or very short jins on those species.
大きくこれから枝を動かします。それは針金だけでは効かないので、引っ張りというので。
So we're going to go into some quite large branch manipulation here, and the wire that's been applied would be insufficient in order to bend those branches into the desired position. So what we're going to do is use a guide wire in order to pull the branch into the desired position and hold it there. So the wire is being fed through one of the gaps in the wire that's been applied to the branch, and they're just trying to find the ideal point to fix it to. So the guy wire that's being used is a thin piece of copper.
引っ張りをする起点なんですけど、幹に陣とか井戸があればそこを引っ張りますけど、ない場合は今のように竹を打って基礎を作ります。
And so I'm trying to find a fixing point for that guy wire. If there's a jin or some sort of feature on the trunk that you could use, that would be ideal. But quite often you would need to use another fixing point, and what they've done is they've hammered in a piece of bamboo, a very thick piece of bamboo, which will act as the fixing point for that branch. And as you could see, when the branch was being manipulated and pulled into place, all that Theo was doing was tightening the wire. All of the majority of the work was being done by Hiroaki as he was bending the branch down. He was applying all of the force to the branch rather than the wire being pulled. Okay, and in doing so, he was able to have full control of the bend. Had to be able to sort of feel the branch as it's bending, in case there's any sort of risk of snapping. If when you're using a guy wire to lower a branch, you just pull on the guy wire, then the branch can move suddenly like that and snap. So it was a very controlled bend by Hiroaki, and the tightening of the wire was done by Theo without applying too much pressure, without pulling on it too much.
針金掛けのコツなんですけど、掛け方によって幹が下げたりしますので、一番いい方法は曲がる角に針金が来るということがいいですね。
So looking at wiring, there's lots of different sort of tips and techniques. It's very important, but it's really important to understand the purpose of the wire. Okay, why we actually do it and what it's doing. It's very important to try and get the wire on the outside of where you're trying to bend it. Can we have the camera here? Close enough. To here. Zoom.
これは導線と言いまして、
Magic trick. Okay, here we go. 上手。
4時間かけて仕上げなきゃいけないから。
We got to fill 4 hours somehow.
大事なのは、これは焼きなましてありまして、最初に曲げたときは柔らかいんですよ。次はもう硬くなりますので、1回目で決めます。
So one of the important things with wiring with copper is that it has been annealed. It's very soft when it's being used, and so it's only soft with the first bending. So you've really got to make sure you get it in the right position for the first time.
起点になるところをこうしっかり押さえて、それでこう上げます。それで次のところを押さえて、これをただ下げるだけ。
And so you've got to really focus on the fulcrum point, the base point where it's connected to the wire. Okay, get that nice and tight and secure as it's being held by Manuel, and then afterwards all it is simply a case of kind of like lifting and lowering the wire as you go around. Now, one thing you'll notice is that Mr. Suzuki's hands are moving along the branch as he's wiring, constantly holding the branch at the point where the wire is being applied.
ここにかけましたら曲を作りをしますね。
So once the first piece of wire has been applied, they can start to bend.
針金の型というんですけど、曲側のところにこれが来ると幹が裂けないです。次は例えばここに来てますから、これをこう。
So the key feature is to always ensure that the wire is on the shoulder of the branch, he says. So basically the wire is on the outside of the bend. If the wire is on the outside of the bend, then the branch should not break.
大事なのは幹の太さに合った針金をチョイスするということ。それでこの基礎が曲がったらそれに合わせてこちらを作っていきます。
And so the next stage is to use a finer gauge of wire, a thinner gauge of wire, which is more appropriate for the secondary branches. And so after bending the initial branch, you can make some secondary branch selections, choose the ideally positioned secondary branches, and then wire them with a thinner gauge of wire.
力強く曲げようじゃなくて、簡単にこっちならこっちってきれいに巻きつきます。
So when wiring, it's not about putting incredible amounts of strength and effort into bending the wire, particularly for the finer stuff. Obviously the big thick wire, you've got to put some power into it. But this stuff, it's more about just kind of like just gently manipulating the wire onto the branch. It's just a little flick of the fingers as you're going around. You have to be very gentle and kind of caress the wire onto the branch. Otherwise, it sits very sort of tightly on the branch. You're not using the branch as a fulcrum point to bend the wire. You're using your finger to whip it round.
このように一番のメインのところを曲付けしたら、それに合わせるように枝もこう曲取っていきます。その時大事なのは、ここに丸ができないってことね。こうなってしまったらダメなんで、ちゃんと沿って曲げるということですね。
And so once the secondary branches have been wired, they're then manipulated, have movement put in them to flow harmoniously with the initial branch movement. Okay. One of the important things to look for is the branch union, where the branch divides, to make sure that this space here does not become bigger. It's always an initial movement in before it then goes out. If we create a big space in here, it starts to look very strange and very unnatural. So it's always that in and then flow out.
それで決めましたら、今度はあのように伸びたところを大事なところまで積み込みますね。
And so once that kind of initial movement and the secondary branches have been positioned, then we can look to remove some of those longer shoots, cutting back to where we have secondary branches, side shoots that have good strong growth tips.
長いところを詰めて、下は日が当たらないので取ってしまいます。それでその分の栄養を上に上げてあげていくんですね。
And so, in addition to sort of cutting back to the side shoots in order to create volume, one of the things to look for is to remove the downward growth, so any of the stuff which is growing downwards off the bottom of the branches. Now, these areas are not going to receive any sunlight, so they're providing nothing to the tree. They're just merely sort of taking nutrients and water away from the areas that you want it to go to. So from removing that, not only does it create a much more clean looking image, but it also allows the areas that you wish to grow to have more nutrients and to become stronger.
心拍にハサミを入れるときに大事なのは、こうに切ってしまうと切ったところが赤くなりますので、必ずハサミは斜めに入れるということ。葉っぱを切らずにこうなんです。
So the key thing with pruning junipers is to not just sort of treat it like a hedge and just cut through wherever you wish. It's to really focus where you're putting your scissors, to make sure you go in kind of at an angle and to cut through the actual sort of the woody stem.
そしてこう伸びたところの芽はここに引っ張るだけではなくてちょっとこうひねって取ってあげると綺麗に取れます。
And one of the big things about to pinch or not to pinch, the sort of discussions that exist within the bonsai world, sort of revolves around this. And sort of in Japan and anywhere else, people know what they're doing to junipers. The removal of some foliage does occur by hand, so particularly cleaning the undersides of the foliage pads. And where you have the long kind of extending shoots, if you're very careful and you know what you're doing, you kind of like can sort of pinch them out and twist as you do it, and you can remove them cleanly without sort of causing any browning. So if you sort of cut through or if you pinch in a very aggressive way, then all of the growth will tend to die off, and you have browning of the ends. If you pinch and twist, only the strongest areas, then the tree will be okay.
このようなかけ方で枝を作っていきます。
And so, using that sort of basic fundamental idea, these branches are going to be wired and styled. Does anybody have any questions? I cannot see anything. Probably best. Yes.
Is it okay if it's an off-topic question?
Sure.
Alright.
It depends how off topic.
In terms of preserving the bark, are we going to do something to the bonsai on the left side?
You mean the flaky bark?
I know that moss in time destroys it, and I'm curious about the really old bonsais. How do they get to reach the age of 500 years with moss on them?
Okay.
.すごくいい質問で、そうですね、例えば黒松とかはあんまり苔が乗りすぎると皮がダメになってしまうので苔を取るのは大変なんでそこに溶合剤を強く塗ってあげると苔が枯れますので幹がきれいに保たれることがあります。例えばでもこういう米綱みたいのはある程度この苔みたいな古色感があるので木によっていいとするのがあります。
So the question was about preserving the kind of the bark characteristics and what happens if we start to see moss and things beginning to grow in the bark. What's to be done there? And some of this is quite species dependent and also kind of like aesthetic dependent, so dependent on your preference. But for species such as black pine, if we start to see moss developing in the fissures of the bark, in between the bark plates, it starts to grow, it can cause the plates to flake off. And in that case, it's very much advisable to remove anything growing in there. And you can do that by applying very strong lime sulfur. However, in the case of sort of kometsuga, having small areas where you may have lichen growing or small sections of moss helps to add a sense of age and character to it. And so, in that sort of scenario, you may wish to sort of leave them growing. It is very much kind of a case-by-case sort of situation. But yeah, you shouldn't let moss grow too much. And it's the same for deciduous trees as well, which is going a little bit further off topic as well. If you have like the moss growing over the nabari in the base of the trunk, for too long, and then you remove it, and then you suddenly want to put it into an exhibition, then there will be a discoloration, and it can take a long time for the nabari of the moss covered nabari to match the same colour as the trunk, and so that should also be sort of one of the considerations. Part of the reason for this is the exposure to sunlight. So obviously trees that are exposed to sunlight, the bark that is exposed to sunlight changes colour. So if it's hidden by moss, it won't. So that is another consideration to be made.
Now, Peter, what we see is that Mr. Suzuki-san is moving between the two trees and assisting and helping. What are the choices being made? At what point he lets his apprentices and actually his almost finished apprentices work, and when does he help out? What are the considerations when he aids or lets people go?
「一番大事なのはその木の一番の特徴を出すということで、それは角度とかそれはちゃんとチェックして見てます。あとは枝配りなので彼たち長年やってますので、ほとんど思うところに来てますので、最後仕上がった時に相対的にちょっと確認する作業をします。
So the most important kind of work was the angle changes and the sort of, those main branch removal sections, and that was obviously done under instruction. Then after that, it is quite a step-by-step process. The kind of the mechanical application of the wire and the sort of the methodical creation of the foliage pads, and all of the apprentices and Mr. Hiroaki, who is a bonsai artist and more than capable professional in his own right, does not need any supervision whatsoever, and are capable of doing that kind of mechanical work. Okay, the finer details will be obviously overseen by Mr. Suzuki, and as long as the apprentices are doing what they've been trained to do and what they've been doing over the last 5-6 years, then we won't be too far off the target at the end.
Let's just quickly take a look at the audience. Are there any questions in the audience? And this can also be in Dutch or in German or other languages. Maybe here in front?
This tree's got quite a significant angle change. And all the branches are set to grow towards the light in a certain way. How will it be positioned where it returns to? Is it going to keep it at that angle when you're watering it and stuff? Are you going to have it flat and then when you repot it, put it back?
So the question is basically, now that you have changed the tree quite significantly in angle, what does this mean when you return it to the original place? Are you going to keep it in this position, the pot, or are you going to bring it back until it gets repotted in the proper pot, something like that direction, right? Yeah.
そうね、これだけの大改作をしましたんで、すごく根を崩して植え替えると木が傷む場合がありますので、本当にこのままスポッと抜いてあげて、こっちの根はこう立ったままでよくて、それでちょっと深い鉢に植えます。それで下の根を1年だと十字しますので、それから上を取ってあげると傷まずに進むことができます。
Very, very good question. After doing such work on the tree, it would probably be a very bad idea to repot the tree this year. And so what the best sort of way forward would be is to very gently kind of remove it from the pot and to place it into a larger growing pot at that angle.
with the soil level to roughly where you wish it to be. Okay, so if you imagine the soil level is going to be here, there's going to be a big section of the root ball sticking out of the soil. Okay, so maybe just cover that with a bit of moss. And what will happen over the coming year is that all of the roots will start to grow down, and you'll get a lot of root growth from the roots underneath. And then at various different times in the year, you can just begin to start to expose some of those surface roots, and maybe try and reduce that root ball down ever so slightly. But what will happen is the tree will naturally tend to grow its roots down, and then when it does come to repot next year, you will be able to get into that correct planting angle. But the key thing will be to try to keep it at the desired angle that's going to be created now, put it into a pot where drainage will occur and the root growth will happen in a way that is beneficial to the future. Just 1 second.
前は直したらすぐ植え替えて少しでも早く見たいという気持ちでやったんですけど、結果的にこれだけ古い木ですので、本当にこう根を大事にしてあげてやった方がかえって近回りですね。慌ててやって弱ってしまって何年も元気つけるために費やしてると傷むこともありますので、最終的に今うちはそうにやっています。安全策でいたわってやるっていう。
So in the past, he would often be kind of like in a rush to try and get it to a finished state as quickly as possible and repot at the same time. And in fact, that actually takes a lot longer to reach the goal, because more often than not, repotting after such work causes damage to the tree, which then takes 2 or 3 years to kind of like recover from. And so actually the quickest and most efficient route to the final goal is to take your time and to be patient in that way. So like just doing that kind of like temporary planting angle in a slightly larger pot for this year, and then doing the correct timing of repot the following year with a lot more kind of roots in the area that you want them to be, will actually be the quickest way to get to the end final result. Sorry, there was a question I cut you off. Who was it? Yes?
I was just wondering, when it comes to the tree being able to bend without breaking, and the junipers can be bent quite dramatically, and most deciduous tree can be bent but not so much to the break. How does the hornbeam compare to someone on that scale?
The hemlock?
Yeah.
It's very easy to bend. There's a lot of flexibility in the branches. But the sort of the branches will the wire digs into the branches very, very easily. So you often see hemlocks with quite bad wire damage on them. Some of the branches that were cut off actually had wire damage to them, and some of the remaining branches do actually have wire damage to them.
心拍はかけてる時に多少のひねりには強いんですけど、小密側はひねると結構刈りやすいですから、かける時にそのお互い気を使ってます。
And so junipers, when you're sort of wiring them and also bending them, it's possible to apply some sort of twist as you're doing it. They're relatively strong when you kind of like twist the branches, either as the wire is being applied or as you're bending them. Okay. Hemlock are very weak if you apply that shear force. So if the branches get twisted in any way, the fibres will split and the branches will die very easily. So the application of the wire and the bending, that is one of the most sort of the key points to try and consider. So they're very strong if you bend them down or bend them up or around, but the minute you start to twist them, the branches die off. You are welcome. Right, the work is now getting to be a little bit boring, so can we have the video played, please? AV director. We can either have a short video if you were here demonstrating. Oh, there we go. So if you'd like to watch this video of Mr. Suzuki's garden and some of his works, please enjoy. I'll think of some questions.